Hello, welcome to the Musical Grant Program for 2015. My name is Nicole Lungerhausen, and I'm the grant coordinator for the program. Today we're going to be talking about budgeting. So in this webinar, we're going to be looking specifically at these particular parts of the application for the MGP. Section F, the project budget page. G, the two-page budget note section, and N, the documents listed on the cover sheet under N for Supplementary Financials. I highly recommend before moving forward in the webinar to download the application materials for your particular applicant category, whether that's performer or composer or presenter, from our website, and you can access the link here. Okay, so what I want to do before we look at specific examples within for our project budget for the MGP, I just want to talk a little bit about what you include in a project budget in general, because I know if you're listening to this and watching this webinar, more than likely this may be one of the first times you're applying for grant funding or your very first application. So there are two different things included in a project budget. You have an income side, and your income would be the anticipated ticket sales that you think you're going to get from the project you're asking it to support if your project involves performance. Money from any gigs you might do during the project period that you think you'd like to apply towards the project costs. Money you get from friends and family, also known as individual donations, that they will provide for you in order to support your vision. If your project involves recording, this might involve CD sales of what you anticipate how many CDs or how many downloads you might, money from downloads you might receive over the course of the project. And these are just several examples of the different types of income that you might get. And then, of course, on the flip side is the expenses. So everything that it will cost to actually make your vision become reality. This can be people. So this is fees for the artists who are part of, or musicians, performers who are part of your project to rehearse or perform or help develop the work. Fees for the composer, which your project involves commissioning to create the work. If your project involves recording, more than likely you're going to have fees for sound engineering and other technical personnel. And then the other part of expenses is usually stuff. So it's people and stuff. So stuff would be your venue rental if you're doing a performance, or a sound studio rental, PR and marketing materials that are specific to your project, whether you're doing a recording or whether you're doing a performance, score printing, sound system rental, piano tuning, printing and postage, a bunch of different things that could fall into this category. And that if you look on F, project budget, in our application packet, you'll see a whole bunch of categories listed under expenses. So those are the income and expenses I just talked about, are the cash, the hard cash that it costs or that you're going to receive in for the project. Now there's a whole other category that we ask that people think about including in their budgets if it's applicable to them. And that's what's known as in-kind income. And what in-kind income or expenses are is it's any non-cash goods or services you or your ensemble receive over the course of a project. So here's some examples of what in-kind costs you might encounter. donated time that artists spend creating or rehearsing your project, free use of venue or performance space, or perhaps if you're maybe a more established ensemble organization, you might have an office space that you use for administrative functions, but it's all donated to you. Other professionals who are donating their services, so perhaps your sound engineer might donate a portion of his or her time towards your recording project, or if you have a graphic designer who's designing your PR and marketing materials or your album cover, and they're going to donate their time towards that work, or piano tuning, a piano tuning company is going to donate their time towards instrument tuning. You might be fortunate to have a printer who's donating free program printing if you're doing a performance. If you have like a special event, like you're doing a CD release party, or you have a special event involved with the festival you're presenting, you would have food and or beverages donated by a local business. That would be considered an in-kind service. And here's something really important. If you are listing in-kind donations, you want to make sure that you account for them on both the income and the expense sides of the budget. And when I look at we'll look at a couple of specific project budget examples, and I'll cover and point out where the applicant has put in-kind expenses on the income side, and then where they've shown those shown those in-kind services on the income side, and then where they've shown the expense for that service on the expense side. Okay, budget notes. So this is section G of the application. The budget note area gives you a chance to provide detail on how you came up with the income and expenses, what your rationale is behind that. And as you'll see in the examples that we'll look at in just a few minutes, your notes can be written either as a line item, so you can say something like, okay, foundation grants, Zellerbach Family Foundation, $2,000 pending, or you can write your notes as a narrative, and we'll see examples of that in. Actually, there are examples of that in the application form itself. In section G, we have examples of how to write budget notes by line item. And we also have a written narrative, detailing the overall rationale for the project budget. So, and both of those are really good examples of how to write budget notes in two different ways. There's no right or wrong way. Either one is clear. It's kind of a personal preference, and whatever is easiest for you. All right, so now we're going to actually look specifically at a couple of different sample project budgets. The first one we'll look at is for a project involving performance by a group. And another budget is for a project involving recording, a little more complex, a little more moving parts, more expensive. To download these sample budgets, I recommend that you visit this link so that you can download these documents and kind of follow along as I'm talking them through. All right. All right. So here is the sample budget, the budget with notes example 1. And this is the Carbon Quintet, and they are doing a performance project. As you can see here, they've laid out on their income side all the contributed income. And what contributed means is that it's from like an outside source, or it's from someone gave it to you. So it's you know, like a foundation that you may have applied for, or an institution, friends and family, which would fall under individuals here. You see the MGP grant request. We ask that you put in the amount you want us to, the amount that you're requesting from us. And then you'll see here, there's the earn side. So this includes stuff that I was kind of talking about before, like income from gigs. So this would be like an income from gigs would fall under performance fees. Product sales, so that would be, when I was talking about CD sales, that would fall in here. Obviously, that's not applicable in this particular project because they're not doing a CD recording or any other kind of producing any kind of product. They're just doing a performance. Let's see, and then you have here, you have in kind, where you can see that they've listed a venue, and then what their estimated dollar amount is for that venue, $450. And if you look over here on the expense side, on project expenses, you'll see rentals, and that is their venue rental for $450. So remember what I was saying before about how when you have an in-kind service, you want to show it both on the income side, which they've done here, and then you want to need to account for it on the expense side too, which they've also done here under rentals. And let's take a look at some of the other categories here. We have this broken down into personnel, so the people that I was talking about. We have artists, fees, technical and production, so PR and marketing costs. For, I think probably they have someone here like assisting them with some kind of PR and marketing. We'll find out when we take a look at their budget notes. And then it looks like they've got some money for someone to help them just sort of manage the administrative part of their project. And then in addition, under project expenses, in addition to rentals, they've got printing and postage, equipment, some money for ads. And then under admin, they have a little bit of money for office computer. And then if we scroll down to the bottom, I think one important thing to note is that the total income that they're estimating matches the total expenses that they're estimating. And this is generally good practice when doing any kind of budgeting for when you're applying to a funder like the MGP or any other institutional funder, is to make sure that you're doing what we call zeroing out your budget, so having income that equals expenses. You definitely don't want this number to be a negative number. Because then that tells the reviewer that you haven't maybe really thought through like all of the resources that you're going to need to complete the project, and that possibly maybe you won't have the capacity to complete the project. Just showing a balanced budget tells the reviewer that you've thought through what the projected income and expenses are. So let's scroll up to the next page, to the previous page, and take a look at their budget notes. So here they've detailed where their projected income and expenses are, exactly where they're coming from or going to. So here under income, they've got some money pending from the Zellerbach Family Foundation. They're saying $2,000. Under the line item for individuals, they're talking about doing a Kickstarter campaign. And I believe on their budget they said that they were going to get $2,000 from Kickstarter. And so in order to justify that, they have said that for last year's or their previous campaign, they raised, $1,760. So, that gives us an indication that what they're projecting for individual donations is pretty reasonable because it's pretty close to what they've gotten previously. Oh, and then here we get to find out in number 13 that their venue rental, they have a faculty member in their quintet who gets free rental at the Community Music Center. So now we know where that came from. Okay, and if we scroll down, we look and get details for expenses here. And you'll see here under line 17, which is for artists under personnel, they have detailed out how they got that number that we just saw on the previous page for artist fees. So they're saying $300 for a concert plus $400 for 4 rehearsals times the number of musicians that are in the group. Point out some other things here. I think they've also done a really nice job of laying out in number 25, which I believe is their PR and marketing costs. Like they're saying 850 postcards, $300 from the green printer, and then plus TBA distribution at $130 plus 120 programs, $120. So they've just broken down like this is how we came up with these specific costs. And in number 27, we get to see like that detail that they have for the advertisement. Okay, so they're going to advertise in Jazz West for 3 weeks, and that was the cost for it. Oh, and then let me point out in number 24, Community Music Center rental. Again, this is what I'm talking about, where they have included the in-kind service in both the income side of the budget and the expense side of the budget. Okay, so that's a budget for a project that is pretty straightforward. It's a performance project. We've got some expenses for musicians. Obviously, we've got some PR and marketing expenses, but it's not overly complicated. So why don't we look at something that is a little bit more detailed? So now we're looking at the document titled Budget with Notes Example 2, and I am going to scroll down. Oh no, I'm going to scroll. Here we are. We're in the right spot. So again, we're looking at the Carbon Quintet, and they're doing a CD project. And as you can see, as we start looking through this budget, the income that they're projecting is a little more substantial, and the expenses are also more substantial because it's got some more moving parts to it. Again, it looks like we've got $10,500 here on the contributed income side. So it's looking like they're they are projecting some pretty heavy contributions from individuals and a pretty significant contribution from foundations, as well as the MGP grant request. And because they are doing a recording project, they're listing their product sales here. And then on their in-kind is definitely much more substantial than the budget that we previously saw. So they've got a graphic designer, a photographer, producer, administration. And then when we look at the budget notes, we'll see for these in-kind folks, we'll see how they've tucked in. It'll be a little tough on the expense side to see where they've, it's not super obvious on the expense side where they've tucked in these in-kind expenses, but that's where the budget notes come in handy. That's where you can really detail out where everything is in terms of your expense. So why don't we scroll up and take a look at the budget notes here. Okay. So in income, it looks like they're again projecting some money from Zellerbach Family Foundation. This time, they're going with a different online fundraising organization, but still, again, it's great that they're showing us, you know, what they received in their last campaign, so they can justify, you know, the amount that they expect to receive under this current CD project. Here, under product sales, they have detailed out, you know, okay, so we think we're going to sell 100 CDs at about $15 a pop. So we get where that number came from. And then here, under 13, 14, 15, and 16, you can see that they've listed out the different organizations that are, or people who are going to be giving them in-kind services, which is a nice thing to detail because, you know, now the reader knows that it's not like a pie in the sky kind of situation like we think we might get this in-kind donation, but that it is actually real. It's actually secured. Okay, on the expense side, it's nice that they've listed out, detailed out artist fees for both the recording session as well as for what the artist will receive for rehearsal. And then here we have technical production. And here you'll see that they have the producer, Sylvia Marshall, who is providing an in-kind service. And you'll see that they have put in a monetary value of her service as an expense of $1,000. But they've also made sure to note for us, the reader, that it's in-kind, so that we know that it's been accounted for on both sides of this budget. Let's see here. Let's see some other things to point out to you. Okay, I think that is it for this particular example. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. Some budgeting tips in addition to what we've been talking about in this presentation. Or to really reiterate what I've been talking about, is income should equal expenses. That's just, you know, standard good practice when you're applying for any kind of institutional fundraising, is to make sure that you're showing a balanced budget or zeroing out. Budget notes are going to help you address your capacity to fundraise for the project. It's going to let the reader know, the reviewer know, that you've really thought through clearly what it is, what the resources you're going to need to be able to do the project, and what it's going to cost to do it, and that you've thought through like what the reasonable costs are for a venue, you know, for a night or two of performances. You know, what's a reasonable cost for sound engineer? You know, what can we reasonably expect from CD sales if our project involves recording? Something to make sure that when you are budgeting is to make sure that the budget, the numbers that you're presenting us with, match what is being described in the narrative and vice versa. So let's say, for example, you are doing, you're doing a CD project, and or you're doing like commissioning, and it also involves recording a CD, of a new work. And you would have a lot of, you're anticipating that you're going to have a lot of PR and marketing expense associated with that, because you're going to be releasing the recording, and you're also going to be having like a release performance or a premiere performance around the particular work that you're recording. But then we end up looking at your budget. We see that you have very little PR and marketing costs in your budget. Well, that's a case where there's a disconnect between what you're saying in your narrative versus what you're saying in your budget. So just make sure that when you're talking about, oh, we're going to have this great PR and marketing campaign, and we're going to do A, B, and C, just to make sure that those components of your plan are included in your budget, so that, again, it speaks to what I was just saying about capacity, so that we know that you have realistic expectations about what it's going to take to actually, fulfill your dream, your vision. Okay, the last piece I want to talk about is the supplementary financials, which are the N listed on the cover sheet of the MGP application. Now, in this situation, these supplementary financials are only applicable to any applicant with income or expenses more than $75,000 only. So if that is not you, you do not have to worry about presenting these particular items. But if you are in a situation where you do have a budget of over $75,000, we ask that you submit a California Cultural Data Project report, which if you submit an application to like the San Francisco Foundation or Grants for the Arts or a number of other organizations in the Bay Area, you have to complete that anyway. So we would ask you to submit that report. Or if that's not available, or you don't do a CDP report, we ask that you submit the first page of your 990 tax return for the most recently completed fiscal year. All right, so if you have questions, you find you have questions after this webinar about budgeting, there are a number of different resources that you can call on for help. One is the FAQ on our website. It's very extensive. It can help you answer questions around budgeting, about what kind of costs to include, as well as other questions about other areas of the program, like eligibility, narrative requirements, geographic requirements. So I highly recommend checking that out. And also, as a reminder, if you are a first-time applicant applying to the MGP, you must get in contact with an SFFCM staff member prior to submitting an application. This is absolutely mandatory before submitting anything. And to do so, you want to visit the link listed here and click on it to schedule a phone appointment. If you're a returning applicant, you can book an appointment at the link above with a staff member, and actually we highly recommend that you do so even if you're a returning applicant, because it gives you a chance to talk through your project with a staff member who's knowledgeable about the MGP. You can talk about eligibility, you can talk about any kind of special circumstances that you're encountering, and so we can really help you think through your application and make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. You can also email me if you're a returning applicant at mgp@sffcm.org. All right, that brings us to the end of our presentation on budgeting, and I want to thank you for joining me, and I wish you best of luck with your applications this year.